I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. David Clerk will do roll call.
Joe Welter,
Here.
Kelly,
Morning, Brady.
good morning. Newman,
Good morning, Tracy.
good morning. Schreier,
Here.
Pitcher,
Here.
Condado, here. Briggs,
Here.
Ottinger,
Here.
Harris, here. Winkler,
Here.
Jensen,
Here.
Rio is absent. Sorgo,
Here.
Roach,
Here.
Timmons,
Here. Good morning.
good morning. Reed,
Good morning.
good morning. Bryden is absent. Almekender,
Here.
Schultz,
Here.
Cushing, Alinsky,
Here.
19 present, 2 absent.
We have a quorum, we can conduct business. Item 3, please use your microphones when speaking. That's for all supervisors. Item 4, accept the minutes of June 20th, 2023 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Here we have a motion, a second. Any corrections or changes? We do a voice vote, all in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries all 19 ayes. Item 5, 2022 audit presentation, Tina and Anthony from Thickwood LLP.
Morning.
Be on Zoom.
Good morning.
Morning. Who goes, Tina or?
Yes, I'll go ahead. This is a very high level overview. Both Anthony and I are available to answer the questions if you have them. If it's not a question that we can answer right off the top of our head, I will make notes. If it's something that needs to be researched further, and then I will get together with Anthony, document the responses, and then forward those to Tracy, provide back to the county board supervisors in total. So that we aren't up here for sure. Anthony and I would take an hour if you want us to, but trying to be respectful of your packed agenda today. So this is an overview of the audit for December 31st, 2022. State statute does require that we have an annual audit completed. An annual financial report is also filed with the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. Sickage LLP is our external auditor. They have been retained for a 5-year agreement. And this is the 2nd year of that agreement. We did do an RFP for that. The full audit report is posted on the county's website. When hard copies are received, we will put those in the county board supervisor mailboxes for you. So for audit purposes, there's really 2 large groups that we combine all of our financial activity into. One is governmental activities, and that's the activities that are principally supported by taxes or other intergovernmental revenues and fees. And this includes things like the cost of the county board and the finance department, so general government, public safety, our health and human services, as well as recreation, conservation and development. And then there's another grouping, and those are the services that are intended to cover their own costs through their own fees. So for our county, that is our highway department and our solid waste department. So for the year ending 2022, we had a good year financially. Our revenues in total were 56 million and our expenses were 51.1 million. So we had net revenues of 4.9. When we talk about the governmental activities, so public safety, general government, health and human services, we had a 2.3 net return. So our revenues were 45.7 million, expenses 43.4. And then for our business type, the highway department and solid waste, we had a good year as well. Our total revenues were 10.3 million, expenses 7.7, so 2.6 net on those. So it was a good year overall. For our governmental revenues, our largest revenue was property tax of $18.1 million. That made up 38% of our total revenues collected. Second is grants and contributions of 14 million. Other governmental revenues was 9.1 and charges for services 6.4 million. So we continue to be, the majority of our funding comes from property taxes, grants and contributions. So tax sources through the federal and state government. For our governmental expenses for 2022, our largest spend was in the area of health and human services. So 34% of our governmental spending, or 14.6 million, was in that area. That includes our social services department, public health department, veteran services, and human service center. So that was our largest spend. Second was public safety at 31%, which is a close second. So that was 13.3 million. So that's with the sheriff's office, emergency dispatch services, and ambulance services. And then general government made up 20% of our spending, and then other is 6.6 million or 15%. Now the general fund is part of governmental services, and that's what we talk about quite a bit in budget hearings, and that's where most of our activity happens. So for our revenues, we had revenues of 31.7 million in the general fund, which was over budget by $2 million. Of that, 66% of our revenues were from taxes. So we did finish 5% higher than budgeted, and that was largely attributed to the positive performance of sales tax last year. For our expenses, we finished under budget by $1 million. We had a total spend of 30.2 million. 40% of the general fund dollars went to cover the cost of personnel, which is 15.7 million for last year. This was under our budget by $400,000. We ended the year with an operating surplus of 1.5 million then as a result of operations, but we did transfer out 3.5 million for capital projects, which was part of the plan. So that brings us to our fund balances at the end of the year, or as our chairman likes to call it, our tin cans. So our general fund balance at December 31st is 22.2 million. This is down 1.8 million from the prior year. Of that 22.2 million, 16.6 is set aside for specific purposes. So isn't available to spend on capital projects or other things. 3.1 million is continuing appropriations or projects or programs that were started in a prior year that will carry forward. 9.5 million is in our stabilization fund. The county adopted a resolution to set up a rainy day fund or stabilization fund, and that's 9.5 million at the end of the year. So that leaves us with unreserved or unrestricted fund balance of 5.7 million at the end of 2022.
You want questions at the end, or?
You can ask whenever.
Okay, just real quickly before you move forward, when you were talking about governmental expenses, you said other 15%. Could you give me an idea what other is?
The forestry department, buildings and grounds.
Okay, and then the rainy day fund at 9.5 is in the 16.6 that's reserved.
Yes.
And could you tell the county board what a rainy day fund would be used for?
So I would have to pull up the resolution. I believe that we crafted it, that it would be used, it would have to come back to at least the administration committee, probably the county board. And it would be used for things like weather emergencies, unforeseen emergencies that weren't part of your budget and you need cash now. Maybe you're waiting for insurance reimbursements, things like that.
Thank you.
Okay, so financial activities for our business type. So our highway department finished, it had a good year in 2022. Revenues were 8.4 million. We also did transfer in 1.9 million And then expenses were 7.7 million. So we actually finished the year up by 2.6 million in our highway fund. And solid waste also had a good year. Revenues were 2.1 million, spending was 1.9, and there was a $400,000 transfer in. So the solid waste fund ended up $600,000 from the year before.
So what's the net on that
600,000 for solid waste.
in the year? What's the total value of their general fund, whatever?
Oh, their ending fund balance?
Yes,
I'd have to look that up and get that.
but it was increased by 600,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Our capital assets, and this is all of our capital assets combined, and just to note, it does include the airport's assets as well. They are a subsidiary unit of the county. So land stayed pretty much the same. Again, a lot of that's either forestry or the airport. Our building and improvements increased by 1.4 million to a total of just under 18 million. Machinery and equipment went up about 600,000 to 10 million. And then infrastructure, which is our roadways, things like that, went up about 800,000 to 18 million. This is net of depreciation. It is nice to have a net positive increase in these assets. That means that our reinvestment in our assets is outpacing the cost of depreciation. So overall, that's a positive that our capital assets net of depreciation went up compared to the prior year. Again, I know that was really quick. I'm happy to meet individually with supervisors in person or by phone. And if there's any questions, Anthony is available to answer those as well.
Rob, another question.
Yeah, if we can go back to your general fund year-end balance slide there. I'm getting old, my, it's hard to read the numbers. So you said we have a 5.7 unrestricted fund balance. 7 million, correct?
I'm sorry, you're on my bad side.
It's the-
Yes,
I think you indicated 5.7 unrestricted fund balance.
yes,
Okay. So that's built up over time. That's not just from this year.
correct.
Okay.
In fact, we reduced the amount of fund balance in
Right.
2022. We transferred more out than we put in.
So of that 5.7, is some of that already designated to go someplace for like
Yes,
3.1 continuing appropriations? Is that in there?
the 3.1 is a separate column on there. That's the first column. 3.1
You
is
mentioned-
not part of the unrestricted.
And you mentioned 1.8 billion, and I didn't know what that was for. I didn't really know.
1.8 million is the amount that we decreased our overall fund balance from 2021 because we transferred out 3.5 million.
So that 5.7 million, that's, I'm assuming that then is what we looked at in terms of funding some future capital improvement projects.
Yeah, some of that's being used in 2023 for capital projects.
Right. Okay.
Stephen. You mentioned a $400,000 underspend for personnel.
Yes,
Would that be mostly attributed to budgeted but not having actual people in place,
it is almost entirely attributed to vacancies.
vacancy?
Yes, we've had a significant amount of vacancies throughout the year.
Any other questions?
One last one. When you look at other counties with that 5.7 unrestricted balance, is that kind of pretty typical?
Oh.
The reason I'm asking is that every year when we build the budget, we've been saying 0% increase in non-personnel. And I think there are some departments that are saying, well, if you keep coming out in the black significantly, why are we restricting non-personnel? We're not allowing some increases. And I know you said part of it, we get good sales tax year, and it's always good to construct the budget conservatively. But I think some look at the 5.7 and why aren't we getting some increases in negative for administration? Why are we not allowing some flexibility? But that's just philosophical question.
Something you'd like me to address?
Well, but is that pretty standard of the county our size to have that kind of unrestricted balance?
I'll actually defer to Anthony because this is what he does.
Sure. So I, in terms of, the unrestricted or the available resources there, I would more so encourage the supervisors to look at your, your fund balance as a percentage of your current year expenditures for that. So when you look at those percentages there, you're in line with other counties in terms of that. There operationally, you are afforded flexibility when you have, unrestricted or unreserved amounts, if you will, in that fund balance there, whether it be for future capital needs or other operational considerations that may come up from time to time on that. In terms of where you're at, I would say you're not, you're not out of the norm in terms of that. And I think a lot of the things that Tina noted in her presentation are consistent with what we're seeing elsewhere. So in terms of, increases or, increases on a revenue standpoint, but some, difficulties and challenges that come with filling those vacancies, et cetera, on that. So expenses being captured there when you're fully staffed on there. Obviously, you might see those things more in line with that, but I would say you're, pretty on par in terms of the other counties that we see in the benchmarking that we do.
Thank you, and I appreciate that explanation.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody? Okay, thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here we go, public comment, a time limit of 3 minutes. Anybody in the audience want to make a public comment? Come to the front. State your name and address, please.
Good morning. My name is Carl Faith. I live at 6824 Highway 8 in the town of Guston at Shore Lake. In 2000, and I'm speaking in opposition to Resolution 82, 2023. In 2018, Oneida County spent $60,000 to remove protections from the county and to strip local control from the people that live, work, and pay taxes here. This was done to promote a private special interest in the town of Lynn that the people of the county did not want. It was a horrible use of our fiscal resources. Now Oneida County wants to spend $10,000 to promote a small number of private special interests that would increase development of our lakefronts, adding to a growing public nuisance. This is a horrible use of our fiscal resources that we will never recover. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else?
My name is Kathleen Hickenberg. I live at 4820 Bend Road in Sullivan Township. I'd like to make a comment on Resolution 82, 2023. To retain outside counsel for legal representation for Ordinance Amendment 13, 2022. From what I understand, the amendments to the current shoreline regulations pertain to things like exterior ladders in boathouses, concrete aprons for boathouses, and other objections to current shoreline regulations. Out of the 35,000 Oneida County residents, how many residents are affected by these proposed changes? 20, 50, 100? Using county general for amending rules for the benefits of just a handful of people doesn't seem like a good use of county funds to me. It seems like the people who want ladders and concrete aprons on their boathouses should maybe hire their own counsel to go to the DNR, and instead of being subsidized by the money of the taxpayers of Oneida County. Shoreline protection is crucial for preventing erosion and providing habitat for wildlife and fish along our precious lake and waterways. DNR regulations are based on current science. After the DNR comes up with the best possible protective guidelines, these guidelines have to then be approved by the DNR board, who may or may not approve them according to prevailing political opinion of the time. In other words, the ideal regulations have already been watered down to be more pleasing to prevailing political opinions, and probably should be left as is. Not to mention the waste of money to pay what amounts to essentially an anti-environmental law firm that is known to work for entities that want to promote sulfide metallic mining to skirt these regulations for the benefit of an extremely small minority in this county. We need more shoreline protection, not less. Ask any fisherman about walleye population these days. It is extremely challenging, if not impossible, to restock lakes with walleye fingerlings when the shoreline has not been maintained with adequate vegetation. The same is true for all aquatic life, from turtles to frogs to all game fish. Maintaining adequate shoreline protection is critically important to aquatic food chain. Yellow perch, largemouth bass, and other fish, amphibians, and insects use shoreline vegetation as refuges as they grow. I'm asking to please reconsider spending taxpayer money on things that will hurt us and our unique way of life in these beautiful Northwoods for the benefit of a very small minority. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak also about the same resolution, if you please.
Your name and address, ma'am?
Sorry, Stephanie Burrow is my name, and I get my mail from Minocqua, but I pay taxes and vote in Hazelhurst. And try for a little bit of humor. I imagine this board is really tired of the shoreline protection ordinance, having struggled with it for a long time, especially the Planning and Development Committee. And I have to say, I think maybe a lot of lay people might agree with me that Chapter 9 is convoluted, incomprehensible, and basically a hot mess. And you could say, and you might even consider it humorous, that the idea of planning and development isn't alongside of shoreline protection is an oxymoron. You cannot have it both ways. That we've already gone too far, and maybe we've passed the tipping point already. But to get back to the specifics, small potatoes, just a $10,000 request for money for legal advice, legal analysis, and language that may be acceptable to the DNR concerning the remaining disputed portion of Chapter 9. I think it's the remaining disputed portion. The good news is you don't need to spend this money. You've got very carefully conceived and explained instructions for what does comply with the DNR. There are letters, and even I can understand them. It's really simple. They're dated March 28th and March 7th, goes through the proposed amendments line by line. Most of the corrections are grammar. I don't think you need legal advice to understand the corrections that you need to make to this ordinance. So that's the good news. You don't need to spend the money. I know it's not a lot of money, especially after hearing your audit and how well the county's doing. That's all good news too. And you especially don't need this lawyer doing his expensive suits. I mean, you've seen him before. He's made a name for himself in Madison and Milwaukee, and with Canadian mining companies that are still nosing around here. You don't have to throw good money after bad. And you can spend your time and energy, your valuable time, and our tax money fixing other messes. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Anybody in the audience, public comment? Just for the record, I believe Dan Buck submitted a public comment to all the supervisors email, okay, for the record. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Motion to approve.
Second.
Here we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Ted.
I'd like to pull resolution, from the consent agenda 76, 2023.
Okay. Here is a motion to reflect the full resolution 76. Any other requests?
Did you say 76 or 77? 76.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The clerk will call the roll on the balance of the consent agenda.
Showalter,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Simmons,
Aye.
Roach,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cushing,
Aye.
Zordo,
Aye.
Winkler,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Oettinger,
Aye.
Newman. Dryer,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Harris. Aye. Olmekender.
Aye.
Condado,
Aye.
Alwitsi,
Aye.
19 aye, 2 absent.
19 aye, 2 absent, the consent agenda passes. Item number 8. I think that we're going to take resolution 76, Chad, after 79, is that correct? Okay, so we'll go to resolution 78, 2023, offered by the supervisors of the administration committee to request coronavirus local fiscal recovery fund allocated to United County through the American Rescue Plan Act for the purpose of paving solid waste, landfill, and parking lot. Billy?
I'll turn it over to the solid waste chair. Well, no, yeah, Lisa's here. Yeah. No, the administration committee just did pass through.
Okay.
This came from solid waste and Lisa's here to speak to it.
So this is coming back because I went first all morning. So what meeting come back is, it was a KIP project that was added, for 2023 to do the paving at solid waste. The board allocated 370,000 to do it. The project came back at 574,000. So 70, resolution 78 is for the county board to approve the $370,000 to be used towards that paving project.
Coming from the coronavirus relief.
Right, that's okay.
And then the other balances in the next resolution.
Correct.
Right? Any questions? Jim?
I'm just curious, what do we have in the ARP fund balance?
Billy, can you answer that question? I mean.
Yeah, well, first of all, this resolution deals with money that was appropriated for
Right.
23. As far as the balance, there is going to be a meeting of the committee that oversees the ARPA funds here at the end of August, and we can bring you that update in September. We actually, for 23, had committed down to 0. But with the broadband project, there may be, which is not finalized as far as bonding, there may be that 1.5 to work with for future requests, but that is not available at this time. So the balance is actually 0 on the books, but very likely and hopefully we'll have 1.5 to work with for 24. This project was approved in the 23 budget for allocating ARPA funds. This is part of the process. First you get it appropriated, then you bid it, and when you're actually spending the money, which she hopes to do with a future resolution, this gives her the ability to finalize the ARPA process.
Thank you. Any other questions, Rob?
Okay, I guess when I look at this is that I think the county has a responsibility to improve the infrastructure of that site. It's a county property, county site. It isn't, I'm not suggesting this happened, but let's say, for instance, we decided that Waste Management would take this over you have to have the infrastructure. You know, we run our own solid waste, we're very successful with it. So I see this as an infrastructure investment. It's more than just solid waste. It's something we need to do to make this site valuable.
Any other questions? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Cushing,
Aye.
Condado. Aye. Harris. Aye. Schreier.
Aye.
Olmekender.
Aye.
Winkler.
Aye.
Showalter.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Roach.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Zergel.
Aye.
Newman. Briggs.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Ottinger.
Aye.
Simmons.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Kalinsky.
Aye.
19 I, 2 absent.
19 aye, 2 absent. The resolution requires a 2/3 majority, so resolution 78 passes. Resolution 79, 2023, offered by the supervisors of the administration committee to amend resolution number 128-2022 to loan general fund monies to the solid waste department for funding capital equipment and improvement projects. Billy? Anyone, or Lisa?
So this would be to borrow the rest of the money in order to get the project completed. The project to complete is $574,000, of which $370,000 would be paid through the ARPA funding, leaving a balance of $204,336. Amending that resolution, there was money approved that will not be spent any longer. So the actual payment amount would be the same as what was approved prior.
Any questions for Lisa? Anybody? Clerk will call the roll.
Schreier.
Aye.
Zergel.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Condado. Aye. Ottinger.
Aye.
Winkler.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Showalter.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Olmekender.
Aye.
Harris. Aye. Simmons.
Aye.
Cushing.
Aye.
Roach.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Newman. Kelly.
Aye.
Kalinsky.
Aye.
19 I, 2 absent.
19 aye, 2 absent, resolution 79 passes. We'll go to resolution 76. 2023, offered by the supervisors of the Public Works Committee to award a contract for the purpose of the solid waste paving project. Ed?
Yeah, this was brought out to me this morning that we probably should have approved this resolution before we got the funding approved.
Makes sense.
Therefore,
Nice job.
this is, that's what this resolution is for, awarding the project.
And Ted, just for the record, that the contract that's submitted is by quantity, so if the quantities aren't as much, you'll pay less. If the quantities are more, you'll pay more according to those prices, correct? Any questions? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Schultz.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Condado. Aye. Kelly.
Aye.
Winkler.
Aye.
Roach.
Aye.
Schreier.
Aye.
Olmekender. Briggs.
Aye.
Simmons.
Aye.
Cushing.
Aye.
Showalter.
Aye.
Newman. Zergel.
Aye.
Ottinger.
Aye.
Harris. Aye. Fisher.
Aye.
Kalinsky.
Aye.
19 I, 2 absent.
19 aye, 2 absent, resolution 76, 2023 passes. Resolution 80, 2023, offered by the supervisors of the administration committee to authorize a reimbursement agreement with Buck Tussle One LLC for the United County expenses related to the $24 million bond guarantee. Billy?
This is a good one. If you read the whereas statements, it's where the county can get reimbursement for any expenses we've incurred related to the administration that's been going on prior to the county board approving the bonding. So I encourage the words bond counsel, financial advisor, and I don't know what the third one was, but anyways, this allows the county to enter into that agreement where we can submit invoices for costs that were related to that getting all the information and getting things to you to, offset the expenses the county incurs, so it's a good thing.
Any questions for Bill? Hearing none, the clerk will call the.
It's not a question, just a comment, I guess, because obviously this is contingent on us actually engaging in bond with Bump Tussle, so we're still on the hook for it in the end. This is just a way to hopefully pay for it if and when this bonding actually does take place, just so that's understood. We've incurred the costs, so.
Any other questions, comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Reed,
Aye.
Cushing,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Almond,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Winkler,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Showalter,
Aye.
Newman, Ottinger,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Roach,
Aye.
Timmons,
Aye.
Condado, Schreier,
I,
Sorrel,
Aye.
Karen, Kowalski,
Aye.
19 I, 2 absent.
19 I, 2 absent, resolution 80, 2023 passes. Resolution 81, 2023, offered by the supervisors of the Public Works Committee to sign a lease agreement to have a communications tower constructed at the solid waste facility in Oneida County. Ted?
You for your shoulder. Mr. Sweeney, would you like to join her, please?
We were approached by, a company to construct a tower on the site. There, I guess we don't use it, it's not in the way, it'll provide revenue for us and future connectivity to fiber. I worked with Don did the negotiations with the customer or the contractor. And we got a contract with the back to committee with most of our demands met. And committee has approved it and brought it to today.
Yeah, good morning again. The company that we're dealing with, Vertical Bridge, largest radio tower company in the US. Founded in 2014. They've been out there, not a fly-by-night operation. They hire, to the extent possible, local people and contractors when they can locally, which will be good. They expect to get going here as soon as they get a contract. When you look at what we're trying to do, we're trying to have some assets and some infrastructure in place so that we can get some fiber out to Lisa's operation there. So this will fit in nicely with the Bug Tussle proposal. And obviously we'll get some connectivity. So Lisa has solid connectivity to do her day-to-day business.
Any other questions? Jim?
So John, what will the county receive as far as run? How does that work?
Yeah, we hit that as hard as we could hit it and beat it up as hard as we could, Jim. And still hoping to have them stay on our property because most of these companies will look at 2 or 3 sites simultaneously. And they'll be negotiating potentially with 2 or 3 other people. So as they're talking to us, they're also talking to other parties. So we were able to exercise an option period. So if indeed the county board would approve this today, they'll have an upfront check, I think $7,500. Yeah, Lisa's gonna be able to move her VHF tower onto the new towers for free that we insisted on. There will be no monthly lease or rent for that. So she'll have a significant improvement for her employees for their safety and using two-way radios around the solid waste facility. It'll actually be better than that. They'll have a little bit bigger coverage, so Lisa won't have the excuse that they didn't hear her on the radio. That's what we'll ensure. And then we'll also have a cell phone that works, so she's gonna really have it good. The employees will have a radio and a cell phone. And then we spell out a 5-year agreement. They'll pay Lisa $833, I think, a month.
And 10,000
Yeah.
first year.
And then we start doing increments at 10%. So that keeps the county in line every 5 years, we get 10% from the. Another cash upfront payment. We also insisted on another 10,000 upfront. So we're gonna, you know, we hit them as hard as we could. And still knowing that we're competing against, a couple of other sites that are always at the same time.
Thank you. Rob, you had a question?
I think Connor had one.
Oh, Connor, go ahead.
How long is the agreement?
30 years.
30 years, we're up to at least 30, Connor.
And I don't know if everybody else said, but it said there was an attached agreement and attached my map and I didn't have it either. Right. I just didn't.
Line 18, line 17, 18 says see attached agreement, I would think the agreement.
It was not attached to what was provided in my office on Thursday.
So at least there was supposed to be an attached agreement on line 17 and 18. Connor's asking about that agreement.
That was yeah, I'm sorry, that was a contract that was presented to the Public Works Committee that they signed. I guess it should attach that for this.
I just wanted to clarify the link and the payment amount, because it wasn't, we didn't have access to it before now.
Yeah, Connor, we did all 25. What we tried to do is push them up front, of course, cash up front to the extent we could. And then we got up to 30 years. Each of those 5-year agreements is another 10%. Connor, that we were applicable for it. These are covered, somewhat cover what, we're actually in a position where, by the way they cited that, I expected them to try to limit their costs as best as they could. There's no excavation. They're gonna have a little tiny bit of grade work, not much. The company's gonna pick a spot that's easy to get in. It didn't affect any of Lisa's operations. So she was happy that the company picked that site. It'll be snow plowing. Yeah, we use that, Mike, in our discussion about snow plowing, because we're gonna plow right to their gate. That's gonna be a win-win. In Lisa's normal operations, she's gonna plow that right to the edge of their gate that they'll have, constructed gate.
So in years 1 to 5, it's 10,000 per year, 6 to 10, it's 11,000 per year, 11 to 15, it's 12,100 per year, 16 to 20, 13,310, 21 to 25 years is 14,641, in years 26 to 30 was $16,105.
So Lisa, just submit a copy of that email or mail to all the supervisors so they have a copy of that. And then question that might come up is, we don't know, I mean, you're getting some of your radio and stuff like that. Is that a good price for power rental? 10,000 a year, I don't know.
It's all over the place, Scott. In the ballpark of what we're trying to do right now, I would say that's a competitive offer. We're negotiating against a company that this is what they do. They're headquartered in Florida. I think they currently have around 300,000 sites. And this is, when you look at some of the agreements they've had with municipalities in our area, we're right in the ballpark.
They started out at like 7,000.
And I get it, it's a big improvement for the solid waste out there that they haven't had for years, so.
The tower rental in itself is worth around 15 to 20,000 for Lisa. She also is not gonna have to worry about a tower for a long time. That'll never be part of her day-to-day thinking. We'll get a good grounding on it. We'll have it properly constructed, so she has a good antenna for her radio. And then, like I say, that's worth a lot of money, not having to screw around with antenna site for her.
Any other questions, Stephen?
So the existing structure that you currently have your DHF on, correct? What happens to that? And were you budgeting any monies for repairs, replacement, or anything like that on that existing structure?
I talked to Lisa's has an existing contractor, Stephen. That's a great question. The estimate I got will be well within the funds that she's going to receive in her initial outlay. The estimate I have will fit in nicely, but she's not coming back to you again asking. These funds will go back to her as a source of revenue to pay for that. One thing about climbing towers, if you're gonna climb that tower, that antenna is a very small cost. You put up that new antenna with the new tower. The local contractor that's doing that, he and I have a long working relationship that Lisa is working with, has worked with. We'll get the best possible local prices that we can.
Go ahead, Steve.
So it references a solid waste revenue account. Is that specific just to maintenance on the tower? Or what is that account and what can that be spent on?
I believe it goes into their general fund, just like all the other revenues from each one of the things that operates out there, whether it's recycling or right into their general fund to offset expenditures.
Solid waste.
Yeah,
general
because it's a
fund.
separate business, just like the highway department is.
Thank you.
Rob,
I think my concern is to where the revenue is going. I believe we have other cell towers located on Oneida County property, correct? And then that revenue,
John can probably answer.
and that revenue ends up going into the general fund. It's kind of like my other is that solid waste is a separate operating business unit, okay? And I believe if this tower was located in the town of Enterprise, the revenue is going to the county. It's not going to a private business, to the business fund, which is solid waste. So I believe whatever revenue that's generated from this tower annually should come into the general fund. As our other rentals do, because it's located at solid waste, it just happens to be there. And why is the revenue going to an independent business fund that should be operating out of its own revenue, not if this was placed at another county site, the revenue wouldn't go to solid waste. It comes annually into the general fund.
So I'll comment on that, Rob. When the landfill wanted to develop another demolition site, they had to buy the land from the forestry department because it was a separate business. So this operates on their land, so I believe the revenues that are generated on that property all stay within that business structure. So that's the way I view it. And I see what you're saying, that there's other towers on the forestry land and all that, but
It doesn't stay, the revenue doesn't stay in forestry. Because it's on Oneida County forestry land, I believe the revenue comes back to the county.
all right, so I'll let Corporation Council, can you comment on this?
Can I just comment as administration, chairman? The resolution has to do with the contract. As far as the revenues, that's a discussion that we're gonna have at administration that we hope to get clarified and use as a tool as we prepare the budget for 2024. The concerns that are brought up are very valid. But we're gonna try to understand the revenue generating things of this county and be able to present it to you with the budget and get some clarification.
Okay, should we be amending line 30 through 33 to state what you just said to clarify that?
I'm okay with it.
Because right now, the resolution
Yeah, it
says-
probably would be a good idea to do it, but
so in order to make everybody comfortable, you want to make a motion to amend line 30 through 32 to state exactly what you said before.
I'd either omit those lines, and if you're not happy with that, I'm searching for the words.
Scott, I'm okay with the way it is, really, I don't amend it. I understand what they're saying, you look at it, just because it gets deposited there, you're gonna review it. I'm fine with the way it is.
So I have to look at it and say, okay, so there's the money would go into the general fund, and then you turn around and ask the general fund for this expenditure to offset.
So
it.
let admin.
We're talking about the same money in different pots of money.
I'm fine.
Okay, if there's no amendment, is there any other questions on resolution 81? Hearing none, the clerk will call a roll.
Benson,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Roach,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Oettinger.
Aye.
Condado. Aye. Briggs,
Aye.
Winkler,
Aye.
Newman,
Aye.
Joe Walter,
Aye.
Schreier,
Aye.
Almakinder.
Aye.
Sorgel,
Aye.
Simmons,
Aye.
Cushing.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Harris. Aye. Kowinski.
Aye.
19 aye, 2 absent.
19 aye, 2 absent. Resolution 81 passes. So on the resolution 82, 2023, offered by the supervisors and the planning development committee to provide funds from the contingency budget to retain outside counsel for legal representation for ordinance amendment 13-2022. Carl?
Got it. Ordinance amendment, or not ordinance amendment, the resolution 82, 2023 is just a resolution request. The ability for the planning development committee to hire outside counsel to help provide some legal analysis on ordinance amendment 13-2022, which is an amendment to chapter 9. The committee has been working on this ordinance amendment since sometime in 2022. It was filed to go to public hearing sometime in March 2023. We had a public hearing, took in public comments. And after that public hearing, the committee decided to basically retain or like to retain outside counsel because they somewhat disagreed with some of the comments that were coming out of the Department of Natural Resources. Basically, the individual that the county is looking to hire is a gentleman named Larry Konopacki. I've had experience with Mr. Konopacki over the years. Our former chairman of planning development, Gary Beyer, and I went to Madison on numerous occasions when Larry Konopacki worked for legislative council, which I believe is just the attorneys for the legislature. We also crossed paths when Oneida County adopted a metallic mining ordinance, because at that time, again, he still was working, I believe, for the state with legislative council. We had a meeting up in the Naco area regarding the new mining ordinance. He is an attorney that's well versed in shoreline zoning issues. Because he worked with the legislature in writing revisions to 59.69 and also NR 115. And I don't know if you have anything to add, Mr. Holominski.
No, not at this point. Any questions?
Oh, and lastly, this was approved by administration committee, at least for the funding, and I believe this is just requesting permission to hire the council, outside counsel per the general code.
I guess my comments would be is on the P and Z committee, we've had run-ins with the DNR over certain things, like the legislators passed a bill saying that you were allowed a deck and a railing, but the DNR interprets it that they didn't give an exception to a stairway going to it, so you're not allowed a stairway to get onto your deck. You're allowed to have it with a railing, but no stairway to it. General construction, when you build a house or a garage or anything, an apron is part of it. The DNR says, no, it's not part of it because it wasn't specifically thing. So what we're asking for is money to hire a outside counsel to advise us where we should go with these things before we pass the new ordinance. Connor.
So question from a background standpoint, are other counties having this issue or is it just us?
Well, I think because we used the other counties and said that DNR allowed them to have this, they now say we're unaware that they were allowed to, even though they passed their ordinances. We copied their ordinances. And then they said, well, we didn't realize the other counties were doing this. So now we became the squealers on the other counties. And then DNR, which was supposed to be doing their jobs, just are now going after those counties for the same thing. So we feel it's important that we get somebody, Konopacki was on there years ago, and he was the legal advice for the legislators writing it. And now he's in a private business, and we feel this would be well worth the money to get outside legal counsel to see where we want to go with this before we present the ordinance amendments to the county board.
Because can I have a follow-up?
Go ahead.
I mean, just hearing their comments, the public comments, the comments in the email, obviously they feel like there's an issue with the resolution for our ordinance. But from the context that I had heard, I'm not trying to have a narrative here, is that we're being basically pigeonholed, forced into a narrow interpretation that other counties aren't. Seems similar for basically what you said. Yes. This is probably the only path forward in which we can determine or deliberate what is acceptable for us and other counties going forward, that if the DNR is gonna be that narrow in their interpretation. But
You could say the other counties are probably doing the same thing, looking at their ordinance. I don't know what letters were sent to the other counties. Carl, could you explain? Because you took their ordinances that were approved by the DNR.
Yes, as a zoning administrator, I don't work in a vacuum. I like to lean on other counties, as far as what they do, how they administer in our 11509.69. In particular, I did contact a county to the north of us, Silas, talked to the zoning administrator about two issues. One is concrete aprons on the front of, on the lakeward side of boathouses, and also stairways to get up to flat roof boathouses. Vilas County was allowing those through policy. And so when we discussed the revisions to chapter 9, I said, don't do it as policy, put the language in the ordinance, so these, by a heart attack tomorrow die, that the ordinance is crystal clear on what is not allowed. There's another concept of what you can and can't do to a structure within 75 feet of the high water mark, and what defines what a building footprint is. The committee wanted to allow accessory portions of the structure, such as decks, to be part of the principal. So you have a footprint, within that footprint, you can do whatever you want, deck, principal, accessory, whatever. That concept I got directly from Lincoln County, and that was actually in their language. Both those counties did receive letters and calls from Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources that stated that a policy / the language was not in compliance. And so the DNR did get after them for what they believed was not correct. But one thing for sure is when it comes to access and viewing quarters, which is the amount of vegetation you can remove for the placement of a boathouse, the placement of a walkway, the Department of Natural Resources, based on this version, we were going to allow or put into code that you are allowed multiple access and viewing quarters, as long as the sum of those access and viewing quarters doesn't meet the maximum. I contend that a lot of counties are doing that as a policy, but when we pulled that as part of our language, the Department of Natural Resources said you're only allowed one. You're only allowed one walkway. And so they came back with that interpretation. I respectfully stated, you may want to contact other counties on how they're interpreting NR 115. But again, they've been pretty clear. And some of the other concepts that is put into language, I know Price County, when it comes to averaging, is sort of administering the same way we are. And I can't tell you what the other counties are, because some of them are just doing it by policy, and it's not in their language. Okay. That makes sense.
Any other questions?
I have a comment. The DNR says you can have a deck, but you can't use it. Does that make sense? That's ridiculous. The DNR says if you have an existing boat ramp, you can put concrete slabs down to the lake into the water, but you can't put a concrete apron on your boathouse. Does that make sense? The DNR says you can have a path going around your house, but if you have a walkout, you can't have a path coming out of your house if you're within 75 feet of the lake. Does that make sense? That's what we're trying to clear up.
Billy?
Scott, a few months ago, when we were talking about the Pelican River, there was talk about the DNR, and I believe someone had reached out to you. Did that happen? And the reason I bring that up is, if we could avoid the cost and just start some communication, which I know has been the challenge all these years, but that has not happened.
I haven't heard one word from the DNR yet.
Okay.
And that was, Adam Payne said that the new secretary said that they would be contacting. I am aware that Ben Pierce out of Langley County, they've been working, and they've got about 650 acres in their county. But they are probably, I don't know if they're working with a smaller one first before they come to us. I don't know what the DNR is doing, but things have been hectic.
Yeah, no,
And I will follow up on that part of it, but the DNR hasn't contacted me.
yeah, I haven't committed if I'm gonna support this resolution or not. I do support all the work you and your committee have done, because I know the challenges you've been through. My concern is more putting money into outside counsel when I see you have good reasoning for what you're saying. And sometimes you just gotta go and take on the fight, you know, so I don't know if it's really necessary to go to outside counsel. I have no problem with the council. Town of Minocqua has used this person. So I know you have someone professional and good, but I think you have good reasoning and sometimes question the need to go out and go in circles with consulting with lawyers.
Jim,
At our land and water conservation meeting yesterday afternoon, comment was made that we're seeing more and more of the lake districts restocking their lakes. And the question became, okay, what's going on with that? And a couple of comments that were made that I think it might be useful to this conversation is that we're seeing a change in habitat for fish. Well, some of that might be because of pulling weeds, but some of it is because of lakeshore development and the reduction of the habitat around the lakes. Now, I don't know how that fits in. You know, I hear what you're saying, Bob, about what makes sense and doesn't make sense. But on a bigger scope of the scale, it's reduction of habitat that is causing our districts to put more and more into stocking of fish in their respective lakes.
Lenny,
To piggyback off of that comment, when concrete, especially when it's down to the water's edge, will leach line into the water, which changes the pH, which causes toxicity to fingerling fishes and some plants. So yes, it's going to drastically change the habitat, and the more concrete you have, whether it's aprons or ramps or whatever it is, the more change in habitat it's going to cause.
Steven.
I guess my biggest hang up on this is in line 32 and 33 where it says proposed revisions and or language that may be acceptable to the WDNR. Well, when I look through what they sent back after you guys had the hearing, etc., and there was a lot of notations in there about what apparently they're telling you is acceptable. So what is it, what kind of legal analysis are you looking for that's going to help you with what they've already told you, I guess? I mean, I know this gentleman is well regarded and he was very involved in drafting the actual language that really technically is causing the problem. The 115, right? NR 115 seems to be the crux of all this. But at the same time, if he was directly involved with drafting the language, isn't he technically also then responsible for contributing to the lack of understanding or the misdirection that's being given to people that are trying to develop?
Let me just answer some of his questions. First of all, Stephen, most of those notations were probably for three things: walkways, viewing corridors, and the use of the deck. So everything that we wrote into there retained back to those three items, which we think should be included in there. So what we're looking for, before we bring the ordinance amendment to you, what's the best way to bring it to you? If we want to put this in here, if it's, we can't put it in here because legal advice says, well, you probably shouldn't because of this and this, then our alternative is to write the ordinance that will be correct to pass the DNR and then turn around and work with the legislators to correct within the statute. But I don't think we want to sit here and bring you and then sit here and we all argue about, well, I think Bob says it's automatic. If you do this, if you're given the use of the thing, you should have a stairway to it. You can't put a ladder up every time you want to use your deck. So that's what we're looking for. And as far as, $10,000, I would rather come to you knowing what we're presenting will pass this board without a lot of argument. Who's had their hand up? Mike Timmons.
We're going back to Steve's question also, the intent is where we're trying to get back
with him being in the room, everything, a lot of it is the intent of what they said the day they made the law, the intent. What is the intent? None of us will ever know what they were, but he was in the room and would understand the conversation that got it to where it is, because NR 115 is a guidance tool. It's not the rule. We write the rules. And without knowing their true intent. And that's what they keep going back. Well, the intent was to do this, the intent was to do that.
Lenny,
I'm looking at $10,000 and having hired attorneys in my past. I'm looking at what that gets us. I don't know how many hours we've spent on this for so far. A lot more than probably anybody wanted to. But what are we getting for $10,000? My computation says 25 hours of this attorney's time. That is like a small beginning. And if once we're into it for $10,000, how much more money are we going to have to follow that with to progress along that timeline? And my guess is this is not a $10,000 commitment. This is going to be a lot more than 10,000 once we're all done. And I know we're only asking for 10,000 now, but in Oneida County, that barely gets you or does not get you a divorce decree. So we're looking at spending $10,000 and we got 25 hours of his time on this focus.
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna be enough.
so Lenny, you could make a motion to make that number bigger if you'd like.
See us spend it. I'd like to see if we couldn't resolve this without private counsel. Yeah, I don't think we exhausted every avenue yet, and I think your relationship with the DNR could be utilized to improve things.
I believe that the 10,000 will be enough for the P and Z committee to get direction out of this we're not getting a legal battle, we're just looking for direction. And he would be probably the smartest guy since he sat in with the legislators writing the statutes. So we're gonna, Mike,
Yeah, we don't have to educate him. He doesn't have to do the research where most outside attorneys would to get up to speed. He's up to speed on 99% of it already. So I mean, the research part isn't gonna be a big thing with him. That's one of the reasons we're going with him, because the research.
Mike Roach.
Yeah, I would say for those that don't know, that the statute is the law and the administrative rule is a little different. So they're supposed to line up in most cases, but sometimes they don't. In this case, they don't. And so what do? We can sit there and say, well, we're gonna interpret it this way. And so to have an attorney that's an expert in the law to say, yeah, the rule says this, but feel comfortable, and I give you my opinion and I agree with you, I'll say it's 20 hours, because he's probably at least $500 an hour. But that's all he's gonna do is write a memo, I would think, to give us guidance on where we are with the law, because he knows the law. Because the rule and the law are not the same at all. And so other counties are doing this. I take it as Oneida County being the leader, first one doing something like this. And if it is gonna be like you're talking about, and I'm not saying you're wrong, it could grow into something bigger, it's gotta come back here and we'll revisit it. But the first 10,000 is that opinion. That's why I'm looking at this.
Any other? Rob?
If we didn't hire the outside counsel and we relied on our corporation counsel, and you bring back the changes in the ordinance and for the ladder and whatever that some would argue or common sense, some would argue not, and we approve that and it goes into place and it may not be consistent with the DNR, what potentially can happen to the county?
Carly, you can better answer that, but they won't approve our ordinance with that in there.
Maybe we should let council actually put it in there, but basically, because we're a creature of the state, we're in our own 59.692. They have the right to step in, tell us what the corrections should be. If the county refuses, they have the right to write a superseding ordinance to go through a public hearing process And to sort of force Atlantic counties to adopt that, all costs, if they're in consultants or DNR time, attorney times, whatever, they can bill back to Atlantic County.
So if the DNR rewrites the ordinance, it'd be more than $10,000.
But if,
Go ahead.
well, let's say for instance, the two issues I'm hearing is, should you allow a ladder to the roof? And should you allow this apron? And this attorney says, yes, you can do that. And we put it into the ordinance, we can still be challenged.
Yes.
Correct? Because he's gonna advise the planning and zoning department, and the attorney's opinion is, it's okay to do this. If we put it in, we still can be challenged. If it's not.
Possibly,
Carl,
yes.
go ahead and answer that.
But again, Mr. Contact, as part of his discussion with me, he really wanted to sit down with the DNR legal staff, not DNR staff, to find out why they're taking the position that they are, what legal analysis are they doing, either agree or disagree with what they're doing, and advise the committee accordingly. But he does want to talk with DNR legal staff on why they're taking the position, especially the boathouses. And he believes, I think I can state this, that a ladder attached and an apron attached is an integral part of the boathouse.
Okay.
Steven,
I don't know that it would make it an easier pill to swallow, but I mean, we're talking about other counties that have already technically adopted language or policy, which they're now told they're not in compliance, even though it was, if I remember, you used the term certified by the DNR in those instances. Where's their buy-in on this? I feel like we're putting out the 10 grand, then potentially looking at them holding a hearing and then obligating us for more costs, which we won't have a choice in spending. And everybody else, the people we reached out to get advice on all this language, they're just gonna sit and watch us spend more and more money on trying to find out how we can bring the language into compliance. I mean, I kind of have an issue with that. I'd like to have a conversation with some of these other folks, and are you willing to foot up something for this up front? So we're not sitting on at minimum 10 grand, who knows what it could end up costing us at the end of the day. I don't. That would be my biggest concern is, you know, that we're fronting the majority of this, if not all of it, fiscally. And it's gonna benefit more than just Oneida County at the end, is my guess.
okay, so Steven, you know how slow government, how long do you think it would take to get an intergovernmental agreement for what you just proposed?
I don't know.
You probably won't be on the county board or by that time. By the time you get an agreement between the counties over who's gonna pay what percentage.
Well, you don't know how long anything will take unless you ask somebody, and if you haven't even made that effort or reached out to anyone, you don't know.
My third and final comment, because I only get three. First of all, I think there is something about attorneys and legal counsel talking to each other. And having, you could go, but for whatever reason in this world, attorneys like to talk to attorneys, legal counsels to legal counsels. And the other thing I want to make clear is that if I support this, I'm not saying I support any of the proposed changes because they haven't come before the board. So no one can walk, if we vote to support this, we're not saying, well, we're trying to get advice. So it's not a yes or no in terms of supporting the changes, we're just looking for legal advice.
Who else in their hand? Mike Roach.
Yeah, I like that comment, and I in no way, shape, or thinking that's what we're doing here. We're trying to get an opinion, and I'm not assuming, Stephen, that it's gonna come back as what we think it's gonna come back. Maybe Mr. Konopak, he'll say, you know, I think that you can't have these things. That's $10,000 to be the leading county to take this initiative. It's a drop in the bucket for what it could be if we get challenged on it before. We're just being proactive. I think if it stems into anything else, it comes back there and we talk about it again.
Anybody else? Okay, clerk will call the roll.
Condado. Aye. Sorbo.
Aye.
Roach.
Aye.
Almakinder.
Aye.
Newman.
This is bad.
Winkler,
No.
Harris. Aye. Fisher,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Simmons,
Aye.
Oettinger,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Showalter,
Aye.
Dryer,
No.
Cushing,
Aye.
Palawinski.
Aye.
Sixteen aye, 2 noes and 3 absent.
16 aye, 2 no, 3 absent. Resolution 82, 2023 passes. Amended resolution number 60 2023 ordinance amendment 06 2023 offered by Supervisor Wayne of the School Board to amend the county board meeting agenda to include an invocation and for Julia second on that. Second. Do we need a second?
You need it because the original resolution was seconded by Condado.
Well, no, but the vote on that was to send it back
Yes, okay.
to work on, and now they've brought forward amended resolution, so this is in essence, I mean, there's a determination made on the last one.
Yep.
And this is now a second to an amended resolution, so now this is supplanted the prior.
Okay. So it's my question.
So we have a second, correct?
Yes.
Okay, Jim?
Yes, you asked me to bring back and we brought back on lines 43, a suggested order of business. I still feel this is a no-brainer that in the Constitution, we have the right to, and I don't think it hurts any of us to pray to Almighty God to ask for wisdom as we conduct our business here, as well as support of our troops, protection of our troops, our law enforcement, and our emergency personnel. And that can be done within 15 seconds. And then the chair can ask for another prayer from another God for another God, if so be, and if not, we move right on into our pledge of allegiance and conduction of business.
Question, Jim, is this just of her offered by just the supervisors, or is this open to the public and to say a prayer?
I would say the ones right around this table should offer.
Doesn't.
I would include our corporation counsel. He could even ask offer for.
So in your on line 43, member means county board supervisors.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? Mike Roach.
Yeah, the last time we did this in June, there were some people that, were worried about what Matthew says in the Bible, like praying alone, don't pray like the Pharisees. I think it's way beyond this. It's about looking at where we are in our world right now, not even our country, our world. We've removed God out of schools in 1963. We see more suicides now. We have more problems than we've ever seen with drugs. What would it hurt? I'm a Christian, so I know that it's going to be benefit in my mind. I strongly believe this. Our first president, before he was the president, he says it's impossible to rightly govern the world without God in the Bible. As far as history, our founders, before the Constitution was written, they were 3 weeks in Philadelphia Hall. It was in the 90 degrees. George Washington was the commander of that party for the Constitution Party to write it. Nobody was getting any headway. This is history. So what happened is a guy named Benjamin Franklin, who is kind of ironic, people don't even think he was a Christian. He came forward and said, what the heck's going on? We prayed every day during when we beat British, the Britons during the war, and God served us. He said, why don't we do that in every meeting right now? And Madison penned the Constitution just a day later. Another story, they did pray every day after that, and it was in our government to do that aloud. You don't have to make a fancy thing like the Pharisees, they actually preached from the corners and thought they were better than God. That's what Jesus was talking about. But then I want to say, I talked to a fellow this morning, a friend of mine, he was on the Eagle River Hospital Board of Directors. This is 20 years ago, 28 years ago. And they were bankrupt. They were ready to throw in the cards. He said the board was meeting daily, not monthly, daily, because we didn't know if we could pay the salaries for tomorrow. And he said, I was a brand new Christian. And somebody said at the committee meeting, does anybody have any suggestions, or we're gonna have to stop, we're gonna have to throw the towel in? And he said, I think we should pray before each of these meetings every day. He said, you could have heard a pin drop in China. He said, and everybody looked at me because they didn't know I'd just become a new Christian. He said, guess what? He said, the next week, they found $100,000 bust in our budget. We were able to hit our salary, and the following week, Marshfield Clinic asked to merge with us. These are the things that I see all the time. So all we're asking is for 15 seconds to say a quick prayer to God. If you are a Muslim or another religion, you have 15 seconds to pray to your God. And I think it's, right now, I think it's so important to put the private thoughts of the not being able to pray aloud aside where we are in this country.
Debbie,
In the last meeting, when this was brought up, it's, unbeknownst to me, that I think there's a lot of us here that are Christians, and I think so many of us do pray in private, and that's all great, the more of that, the better. But I believe that if we can pray here just 15 seconds to ask the Holy Spirit in, we discuss very complicated, sometimes, issues that we just need I believe I need the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and I think it could only be a good thing.
Rob.
I certainly have mixed emotions on this one because I come from both the public and private school perspective and the separation of church and state. And you can argue whether, I think it was in 82, the court case between the Supreme Court about a moment of silence in a public school as to whether or not it was viewed as a prayer or not. At that time, the court ruled it was a prayer. But President Catholic High School, you started every class. We had every committee meeting, you started with the prayer. I can tell you that at the moment of silence today, I was thinking about those in Maui. And it was my own personal reflection of what I thought I needed to respond to today. So I have mixed emotions. I have mixed emotions because even though what I've heard so far is Christianity. Not that any of us would do this, but Satanism can be viewed as a religion. Are we prepared for someone to do 15 seconds of it? To me, it kind of opens up Pandora's box. I was in Rotary. Every Rotary, at times as superintendent, I was asked to do the prayer. I just said really, to me, it's kind of personal. And I think if we extended the moment of silence to 30 seconds, and everyone during that time was given an opportunity to do their own self-reflection, I think that's appropriate. However, if this passes, it's really not all that big a deal to me, but I think it's important, but I can live either way with it.
So I understand that moment of silence that we do in the beginning, we'll ask if any supervisor wants to say a prayer for 15 seconds, and then Winkler wants to say it, he does his, and then I ask, is any other supervisor want 15? The vote says, I want to, and after that, nothing. And if nobody says they want to say a prayer, then we just go on to the pledge at that point. So if you're clarifying this correctly, but we could have 21 15-second prayers.
Today I would have had let's pray for those that have lost so much in Maui.
I doubt it.
That would have been my comment.
Who else? Anybody else have their hand up? Renee.
This is a personal one for me too, because I don't disagree with prayer at all, but I do disagree with starting a meeting with it, because my interpretation of the biblical reference is that prayer should be done in private. And, say what you want about past historical references, but there's been a lot of regret over some of those too. The one entity that we're not taking into consideration is those who are atheists. Now, is atheism a religion? And what are we doing? I believe in attraction rather than force. So what are we doing to those who are atheists if we force them to stand by and listen to our prayers? I would prefer that it be in private. I say my prayers in private, and yes, I need the guidance of any outside entity that can help me understand and move better in the direction of progress for all. But I don't think that public prayer is the way to do it. That's my interpretation. I'm all for, maybe extending the quiet time at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm not okay with publicly declaring my personal beliefs or being forced to listen to a devil worshippers or anybody else's personal beliefs.
Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at what's referenced very specifically in this on line 18, they're referencing the case Town versus Reese. And they found that prayer before a government meeting comports with tradition. So it's not saying that the prayer should be part of our order of business, but it should precede our order of business, is my interpretation of that. Also, a little later on, same reference to the same court decision, line 21, prayer invocation should be offered by local clergy, and then references that volunteers be secured by the county clerk. Again, it's one of those things where, to me, if you're going to do this, you should probably do what would put us in comport with what was decided. Whereas what is being suggested down below in the order of business does not seem to be doing that. The change or changes that are even different from the last time we looked at it under line 43A, it says now the board or committee chair. Well, when did committees come into this? I don't remember any discussion. This was supposed to be about the county board meeting. So now at all our committee meetings, the chair can decide if they want to start the meeting and add that into there. And then of course, I'm assuming you're gonna have to follow the guidelines that you're suggesting about limiting the time of the prayer, asking the members of the committee then I assume, although that's not really technically spelled out, but it says should ask if any person would like to offer prayer. Well, what does that mean? Any person in the room, attendance? We don't take comments via Zoom, so I'm assuming we're excluding Zoom prayer, but I'm gonna have to assume that if you say any person, anyone here in attendance should be invited, not just the elected members of the body, unless of course that is your intent. That should be very specifically spelled out if you're gonna do that. I don't know how our clerk feels about being responsible for looking and locating clergy to take on this role. I would certainly feel better if it is going to be something that we take on as a body, that it be conducted by clergy and not the members at hand. Only because I don't think I personally would feel comfortable leading prayer, but that's just me. So those are my considerations about this. I guess I feel I'm very similar in respect to Linnea. I have no issue with prayer. I would actually have no problem if individuals want to invite members of the body prior to our order of business to conduct prayer. Frankly, I think anything that anyone feels they need to do to be a better supervisor should never be, taken with less than a grain of salt. So, totally believe everything about this is very well intentioned. And I don't want to disregard any of the comments made by fellow supervisors in any way, shape or form on this. But I do agree with Rob. I think you could start to open up this Pandora's box on this that may be unintentional. I probably would have very strong opinions or reservations about having a Satanist or anyone else conducting an invocation, whatever that means to a Satanist. I mean, I like horror movies, and if a Satanist starts invoking stuff, you may be asking for more than you could chew. So take that also for what it's worth, but those are my personal views on this, and nothing more, nothing less. So I would hope that regardless of how anyone does vote on this, that nobody would take this personally, like a judgment on what's been brought forward or by the individuals who brought it forward today.
Okay, just to comment on Stevens, I thought we cleared it up that the member down on line 43 meant county board supervisor. As far as the whereas statements and corporation council concur, those are whereas, but the beef of the resolution falls after now, therefore, that's what is followed. So I don't think the clerk part up above is actually what we're approving.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
You are correct. I mean, the whereas just lays out sort of the backdrop for what is happening. But the resolution is what is ordained as follows.
So when I get down to what's being passed today on line 43, it will say the board or committee chair shall ask if any member, which means supervisor, wishes to offer a prayer, and then it goes on to 50. So it's just these board members. It's not the public. It's not the.
Well, 43 is a member of the board or committee. Line 46, any other person, I think, refers to anyone in the room. I mean, that's what.
Okay. Let's see, Diana, you have your hand up.
Well, I guess mine goes back to what Stephen first said. I have concerns where it mentions the statute. You know, it says before a government meeting. Do we mean is that interpreted in the timeline sense of the word? Or like before as in front of the meeting? My initial thought was timeline before the meeting.
It is. Well, are you asking me?
Yeah, I guess.
In town of Greece, it's at the opening of the meeting. So it doesn't mean that you have a prayer and then you call the meeting to order. I mean, in this case and what town of Greece really talks about is that you're not violating the establishment clause when you're following a practice consistent with Congress and state legislature. And what they do is they call the meeting to order, and then there's a prayer, and then they move on to their actual business.
My point on that would be is we really aren't conducting our official business until after the roll call. So I think doing it a call to order, we've not really started the meeting. It's when you call the roll, now you have a quorum. So it is happening, in my opinion, before the meeting.
Connor, you had a question?
Yeah, so one, I was Googling stuff. And so, I agree with his comment. It doesn't matter when during the meeting according to the legal ruling. So it could be after the meeting starts. So I don't think that's an issue. So that was before he said that. My second thing, just because I think this is probably the most that anybody's ever used the word Satanist in a Wisconsin city.
Probably not.
I want to say it one more time. No, I'm just kidding. No, so I was wondering if prayer was defined as like what prayer could be, because Stephen kind of scared me for a minute. So like, you know, if Satanists then say that, you know, a prayer is defined as, I'm not trying to be stupid here, as, you know, a ritual or a sacrifice of some kind, like, you know, in some sort of temple kind of thing. Can we have a sacrifice, like if Tom decides to sacrifice a, you know, a chicken, is he allowed to do that? It's like, that's, I can do that within 15 seconds, and I think we all love to fry the chicken. But like, I know I'm being stupid now, but like, I'm just very concerned that this becomes something weird. Because people nowadays are very weird, like. Do you get what I mean? Like, can I use the guy from Monopoly's name? Sure. So, I mean, look at Kirk Bangstad, like, he made a circus out of something that's very simple. This is very simple, it's a prayer. Like, we should be able to come here, every one of us should be able to pray and say, you know, God bless us all of that, we could, whatever. But does it turn into something crazy? Say, Kirk hears that this passes, and then he comes here and he says, you know, I'm gonna pray to the great spaghetti monster, because that is a religion that's sanctified in the US. You know, I don't know, what does it become? Like, I don't know, I'm worried about it.
Mike Roach.
So this is interesting. This is not Jim Winkler's resolution. This is God Almighty's resolution, in my opinion. If I'm gonna fight somebody, because when you die, you will have perfect theology. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're an atheist or not, and he's watching everybody talk right here. This is what I'm positive of. And so it's not that, it's a simple thing. The chairman sees he's gonna do some kind of ritual, he doesn't have to call on him. That's what it said. The chair will call with somebody like to have a meeting, a prayer.
But then is that discrimination?
There's no discrimination because he can say, you and me, raise your hand, he can call on one. We can go through all the rules on these policies, that's not discrimination. He's doing a prayer with a sit-down group like you would at home. That's all it is, and you're making way more than this is. And if a Satanist does come here, great, because it's his battle, not ours. And he will win, I can promise you it's happened. And that law that he has in here, it's way more recent now with the Denver, Colorado coach. I just sent that out. There are more communities doing this than ever before, and that's what we need. And to sit here and say, well, I'm worried about a chicken, maybe that's ridiculous, in my opinion. I think you're overlooking at this. This is gonna be a couple minutes, and if an atheist shows up, that is something that we'll deal with, because that's fine, 15 seconds, what's he gonna do? Like Bankston goes on his rampage for minutes, that guy right there will be able to hit his hammer and it'll stop it. That's wwhy we put 15 seconds in the contract.
Okay, so here's two things, specifically, the Arizona Republic, so Satanic Temple members Michelle Storton, Stu DeHaan are expected to give the invocation of Phoenix Council February 17th member. Scottsdale, separate town, had a similar Satanic Temple come to, we don't have any here, but I hope, to give an invocation, and Scottsdale blocked it, and now they're being sued by the Satanic Temple.
We wouldn't block it for 15 seconds. Why would you?
Okay, whatever.
All right, I'm gonna go around the room because, Lene, one last time, go ahead.
Call the question.
Okay, I will when I get around the room, everybody. Stephen,
I actually would like to offer an amendment, please.
okay, go ahead, make it.
My motion would be to amend on line 43 after the board to strike or committee chair and change the word shall to may.
Yes. Okay, strike board or committee chair.
Strike or committee chair
Or committee.
after the board and change the word shall to may. And I would also like.
Don't you want chair?
Yeah, you got to chair, otherwise.
The board chair.
You got the board, that's gonna be.
That's a good idea. I thank you. I appreciate that, the board chair.
Stephen, can I just suggest this to you? After any, could you put if any county board member?
You're talking a different line, correct?
No, 42. The board chair may ask if any county board member, apparently members.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Then possibly could your motion be also to delete 46 and 47?
What are we,
Okay.
what are we adding for members, county board members?
Yes.
Yes. After the word any and before the word member, on line 43, please insert the word.
She's gonna read it one more time when you're done.
And then I would like to delete lines 46 and 47. Because I think they become redundant after the changes that are being suggested.
Okay. The clerk will read the motion when she completes it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion by Schreier to amend line 43 to strike or committee and change the word shall to may and add the word county board before the word member and to delete lines 46 and 47.
That's correct.
No, I just didn't strike chair.
You read what it's supposed to say.
So,
Board chair.
right, so it currently says the board or committee chair, he only struck or committee.
There was no second.
So it will now state the board chair
If she.
may ask if any county board member wishes to offer a prayer invocation.
Yes.
Right, line 46.
And then line 46 and 47 will be struck.
Correct.
That's right. All right. You could have a whole room.
Karen, you good on it?
We're good on it.
Yep.
Any questions on the motion? Clerk will call a roll on the motion.
Timmons,
Aye.
Cushing,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Harris. Aye. Newman.
Nay.
Condado,
Aye.
We'll have a discussion.
Briggs,
Aye.
Walter,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Winkler,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Roach,
Aye.
Sorgel,
Aye.
Almakinder,
Aye.
Schreier,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Oettinger,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Palawinski,
Aye.
18 aye, 1 no, 2 absent.
18 aye, 1 no, 2 absent. Resolution 62 is amended. Discussion on the amended agenda, amended resolution. So Renee, did you actually make a motion to call the question?
Yeah.
Or were you just asking?
Well, I didn't state it correctly.
And so what's the proper procedure?
So you said, when someone does that based on the history of the you would just.
Well, the history was is over time, we would have people get into a conversation and somebody would call a question. But we always allowed the rest of the people to talk one more time before we called the question, especially when most of the talking came from 2 or 3 people in the audience. And somebody call the question now. So when you made that corporations council's telling me we have to handle that motion, I'm saying the past practice of this board, unless we change what past practice is, we give everybody one more chance when you want to call the question. Okay, all right, now this is just on the amended resolution. Stephen?
As we brought this up, just so I'm clear on this, just for future, so normally, and correct me if I'm wrong, when someone says call the question, that should end discussion, and then if we want to continue, normally the body would say, we will vote to continue discussion.
Or I only have the experience that happened over all the years, and you remember Jack Sorensen would jump up and call that question, right?
It was a statement, so we've talked about this long enough.
Yeah.
Let's get on and call the question.
And then-
As long as it's only construed as a statement and not a motion. But if it's made as a motion, then aren't we technically then obligated to
And now that you brought it up, I'm gonna research it, because anybody could stop the discussion when you have the upper hand and not let everybody talk, that would be.
I just don't want us to inadvertently feel like we're giving people the impression that they don't have the ability to make that motion. That somehow, even if you make the motion, you're still gonna go around the room and hear from everybody. Because then it's kind of, what's the point of the motion?
So if someone makes a motion to close the debate and there is a second, then that, if 2/3 of the body votes to close debate, then debate ends.
Right.
And it wasn't clear what, I mean,
Nobody made a second on one
Right,
of these things, so I'm safe right now.
so, but we wanted to address it because, I didn't know, it wasn't, I don't know if you're making a statement of let's finish this up, or if you're making a motion to close debate.
Right.
So,
Just
So the past practice, we gave everybody, but we're gonna be spending our time when somebody says to stop the debate. 2/3 vote, we have to take a vote around the table and then continue with the debate.
and if that motion is made and there's a second, there's no discussion, you just go right to
Okay,
the vote. And then if the vote is 2/3, that means you're just taking the motion, then you go to the actual motion on the floor.
I think it behooves us to not keep falling into those types of pitfalls. If you can reserve that, either please make it as a motion. Make a motion to call the question, or please just wait and let people talk. I think that eliminates complications, and I think we can all agree on that we at least want to follow rules of order as a body. So
you're out of order, he's talking right now. All right, so we got it, and so in the future, if somebody makes a motion to stop debate, then we will look for a second, we'll go through the vote. We're just handling it, it's the way we always did it on the county board over the years, so. All right, we have the amended resolution. Any further discussion on the amended? Billy, Creed.
Very briefly, if this is defeated, I believe there's still the ability for anyone to organize any prayer they want to have outside the building at door number 2, 10 minutes before town board.
Any other discussion? Go ahead.
I just want to make a clarification that we're only asking for one prayer, because and maybe I misunderstood what you were saying, that, each person could offer a 15-second prayer, but the way that I understand it, that we're only one prayer.
One prayer.
Now it's stated that way.
Now it's just one
It
prayer.
wasn't before,
Okay,
but now it is.
okay.
And the county board chair picks, if 3 people hold their hand up, I'll ask. Okay, Stephen, go ahead. No, you could see your prayer now. That's it.
I'm getting to the point where I'm gonna be offering one, but that is my understanding from my reading of line 43. When you say a prayer invocation, it is singular.
It's been amended to one prayer. County board chair picks whoever raises their hand, chooses one person. Any other discussion? Clerk will call a roll.
Winkler,
Aye.
Reed,
No.
Newman,
No.
Harris,
No,
Fisher,
No.
Jensen,
Aye.
Sorrel,
Aye.
Roach,
Aye.
Condado,
Aye.
Ottinger,
Aye.
Almakinder. I'm sorry,
Aye.
thank you. Kelly,
Aye.
Showalter,
Aye.
Cushing,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Timmons,
Aye.
Dryer,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Halawinski,
Aye.
I or no to absent.
15 aye, 4 no, 2 absent. Amended resolution 60, 2000 passes. Next meeting date will be September 26, 2023 at 9:30. Please note the date change to the fourth Tuesday for the WCA meeting. That week. And we'll adjourn the meeting.